Okay, so this is the normal Ajax. I have it referencing the same file that you did.
Okay.
And then I have an empty function right now. We go ahead and that's not open. Open with live server. And if we bring up the console, then we can see that when they press this button, this is the format we get, which is exactly what it looks like in here.
Okay.
Okay. So, this JSON formatting, there's a couple things to keep in mind. When you have curly brackets, that means that you're defining some type of class. Now, have you worked with classes before in an object-oriented programming class?
Yeah.
Okay. This is like a rudimentary class with just no functions, just data. And these square brackets mean an array. So, for example, this first one is in a variable called students, which happens to be an array of 3 items. And each of these items is a class in itself.
Okay.
Because they have different, it's almost like a dictionary. They have a key, and then you have the actual value to it.
Okay. Oh, so they're already set?
Yep. This is all been set.
Okay.
The name, like you can think of these as name of variables, and then this is the value given. So I'm going to switch this out. The first thing you always want to do when you're sending a JSON string is you want to parse it in your code on the client side. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm just going to call it object and shorten version to object. And then JavaScript comes pre-built with this function, JSON in all caps .parse.
Okay.
And I'm immediately going to send the response text into the brackets of this parse. This is the parameter, which is the string version of the JSON. This is the object version, or variable object. This is going to be the object version of the JSON.
That's so instead of doing the get element by ID, we're just parsing it into an object immediately. That's pretty nice.
Yep, and then we're going to start putting it in our HTML.
Okay.
So I'm going to call my empty function, because I'm going to start doing stuff with that. So I'm going to have display object, just passing my object to it. Obviously, my parameter name could have been anything else. It could have been students or whatever. I'm just going to use object now. Okay. So let's say I wanted to print John. If I wanted to do that, I would have to get the students first, and then I'd have to get to first. And then keep in mind this object variable that we're created is kind of on the outside like this.
Okay. So are we going to do nesting for loops then?
We don't need to do nesting for loops, actually. So what is your best guess that I need to do now that I referenced object? How could I reference students?
When you do, would it be object dot students to do that, or is that?
Yep, this is how we reference the students. Now it's an array. So how would I get the first item in an array?
Would you do the square brackets and then pull in the 0? Yeah, like that.
Perfect. You got it. Now I'm going to reference first. So I'm going to just put this in a console.log. It's just a way for us to print it out to the console. And then if we hit this button again, John shows up. Okay, well, let's start to put it in something now. So I have this output div, which is going to be just where I put it at. And the thing is, though, like this information is not good unless we get all of it.
Right.
I can't just reference one. So I'm going to first create a variable, and I'm going to call this text. This is what I'm going to start to fill with my data in a format that I choose. So we're going from string to object back to string. And the reason we go back to string is because HTML wants a string.
Okay.
So I'm going to do a for loop. Now, how can I format this for loop in a way so that it goes through every item?
That would be I equals 0, semicolon I is less than your. Could you do that object?
So
Object
that
dot
would be
length.
that's a very C++ way of doing this loop. There's actually a easier syntax
Mm-hmm.
I can show you real quick. So you're first going to create a temp variable, which I'm going to say just call student because it's going to be one student's information.
Okay.
Use the keyword of, and then we reference our array. And that's it. That's our loop.
Oh. And that
So
will
this is
just go
more.
through all of it?
Yep, and it will set student to each index every loop. It'll set it to an incremented index of
That's
students.
more like Python, isn't it?
Yep,
Okay.
JavaScript definitely stole this from Python. And when something is easier for us to write, we usually tend to go to it because the less mistakes are made with something like this than a C++ for loop.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so now that we have this for loop, I'm going to, let's just say for now, I want to just grab the first name of each of them. Well, I'm going to do plus equals on my text, which is pretty important because we want to make sure that every loop I don't rewrite over the first name of the last one.
Mm-hmm.
I can reference just student dot
First. Okay.
And then formatting wise, I can add HTML tags in. So I'm going to add a break line tag in after the first name. And so then I can go down here and do my document element by ID. We're doing inner HTML on this one. Inner text.
Oh, I didn't know they had an inner text.
Yep, inner text is how we're able to change what is in between these two tags.
Okay.
So in essence, the JavaScript just pulls it in, and that's why we're able to put tags inside of tags, or tags inside of this, and it works just like it normally would, because it's possible to put tags in between inner text. So we got the inner text, and if I hit this button now, we see, is breakline BR?
Yeah, I think, is it because you put it on the HTML? No, that should be fine.
Usually this works. I've shown this example a handful of times. Let's try horizontal rule. Let's see if.
Okay. Would it need the brackets for BR if you're, since it's already a tag and you're not actually wanting it to print that?
Talking about like get rid of the brackets here?
Sorry, I meant the quotation mark.
No, we definitely need the quotation marks because we're defining it as a string, so we do need that. But usually I'm able to, let's see if I do a space and then a BR tag. Wow, this is shocking actually. I've never seen this before. Let me quickly look at the example and see why.
That is weird.
Oh, because I put inner text, not inner HTML.
Okay. I was like, no, that looks right for me. I don't understand. That makes sense. And now I've learned something new. A lot. Cool.
There we go. So inner HTML means that it's not going to just assume it's all of a string, but inner text is going to assume it's all of a string.
So, sorry, I was listening, but the address that they have, that is also going to have another extra loop through. Is there a way to add that for it to loop through all of that within? Do you need to do a nested for loop for that, or is it still going to be fine?
Yeah, we're not going to actually do a for loop. This isn't an array. So we're going to have to individually go through these items. And so if we I'm gonna draw out the storage. So the reason why an array works and we're able to iterate through it is because we can think about them being stored in addresses right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But this could be like index 0, 1, 2, and they're all the same size. So this is going to get a little technical, I guess. So let's just say, for example, it's 4 bytes large.
Okay.
So really easy to loop through that. But classes, they're still next to each other, but they have smaller size boxes. So this could be 8, this could be 1, this could be 4. So we don't usually iterate through something of different size. So when it comes to the same class of just variables, we have to individually call them.
Okay.
But that's okay. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, okay, I get what you're saying.
Gotcha. Okay, so how do you think we could, in this case, reference city?
By doing what you did with the student, or what was it, objects? Sorry. Yeah,
So we have
object
student
dot
now.
student and then dot city.
So if we did city like this, we're going to get an error.
Okay.
So how can we get...
Could you do this square? I guess that won't work because that would just do the first position and not... Oh, because you need to reference address first.
There it is. Yep. Dot address. Dot city. There we go.
Okay.
So we could have classes and classes and classes in arrays and in class or whatever. It can be as complicated as possible. But since it follows this syntax, the JSON parser up here handles it perfectly. And so it'll parse it just as we expect it to be parsed every single time.
That is really nice. And so much simpler. I've been struggling with this and finding examples and I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, the book has some really bad examples. I've had a couple people come in with some really gross looking code and then I show them this and I'm like, what the hell? There's no example. But some recommendations for this way to define the text. I've seen some people do almost like just an address you would see on the back of an envelope.